Yes, you can overcome your anxiety. Do you know the difference between fear and anxiety? Watch this video and I'll lead you some other way to understanding it. Hello again, it's Ian Bracegirdle. On this video we're going to discuss the difference between fear and anxiety. Then we'll think about why an anxiety becomes a concern. You may remember that we mentioned fear and anxiety briefly in an earlier video. Fear is what we feel when confronted with danger, a threat to our safety. Anxiety is when we think about something bad happening. The fear that is felt is all about anticipating. The body and mind react in similar ways to both. So just keep thinking. A few years ago, I was walking in the Rockies in Canada. At the hospital, I began to talk to two fellow walkers about bears. One of them explained his meeting in this very hostel with a very large grizzly bear. As he opened the door one morning to go outside, he found himself standing facing the beast about 10 meters away. They both froze. For a few moments they locked eyes, then they turned and retreated in opposite directions. This is fear for both man and bear. They both experienced a rush of adrenaline into the bloodstream. They both had a decision to make, fight or flight. In other words, stand their ground or run. Anxiety, on the other hand, is sitting inside the hostel wondering, is there a bear out there? The feeling is very much the same, as the same adrenaline surge is going into the bloodstream. But where's the bear? The answer is, it's in the mind. We can all do anxiety when we worry about what could happen. It's normal. But when anxiety becomes chronic, then there is a big difference. In these cases, the anxiety is lodged in the subconscious mind. The fear can be an overwhelming reaction to a frightening event from the past, triggered by some current action or event. Here, the reaction often comes from a memory that is no longer available at a conscious level, but the same fight-flight reaction keeps taking place. A child has three main fears that it's born with. They are the fear of loud noises, the fear of abandonment, and the fear of heights. Each one makes sense if you think about it. All other fears and anxieties are learned. The question then rears its head, where do all the other fears come from? Good question. We, you and I, learn them from the world around us. You may have an hereditary disposition to be anxious, but we still learn those fears. Let's return to that young mum with the snake phobia mentioned in earlier videos. How did she know to be afraid of snakes? We live in the UK, which only has 2 native snakes, and only one of them is venomous. I remember my mum telling me about the adder, our poisonous snake. We live in towns. They don't get into town. I also recall being told by childhood friends how to suck snake poison from a bite. A very useful thing to learn. Maybe that young mum had heard the same story. Or perhaps she'd been to a zoo as a young child and been spooked by a snake. We don't know the true story. Somehow she developed a fear of snakes. Worse, it became lodged in her subconscious, then developed into a phobia. Other anxieties are less clear, but not always. I had one client who suffered panic attacks at home. We unearthed his problem as being to do with seeing a ghost in his room at home as a young child. He just didn't feel safe at home. That made him very uncomfortable and caused his panic attacks. Anxieties grow. Another client with a whole collection of anxieties had been an unwanted child and rejected from birth. Another client who suffered agoraphobia had been abused and suffered the loss of a parent about the same time. The anxieties do not just happen, they are grown and become habitual. Initially, anxieties were developed to protect you. Each one of us who suffers from an anxiety concern does so for a reason. It is because we developed a way of behaving to protect ourselves. We learned to be aware and attempted to avoid the dangers. The process then became an habitual way of thinking. We learned how to do it. It didn't just happen. We learned it. Now, habits can be broken. Just as a smoker can learn to stop, as the alcoholic can learn not to drink, the child can learn not to wet the bed, so you, or the anxious person you care about, can learn to be free of it. It will take time, but it can be done. Keep watching and listening to these videos for more information. This is the third in the series. 4 will be coming up soon, and in that video you will see and hear more details of the different types of anxiety treatment.